first section I'm going to cover, and we're going to talk about the cultural backdrop for brand CSR integration. The next section is the heart of our presentation, which is the results of the study we did on organizational models that are operational today in the companies that have done this well. And at the last section, section 3, Lucille will take us through process tools for evolving an organization to push brand and CSR integration further as the company grows more sophisticated in this area. The last section of our presentation will take you through the tasks for brand. Why don't I do this, so Lucille, I can time it to my talk. Anyway, that last section, Lucille's going to take you through actual tasks for brand CSR integration. In other words, things you can be doing to execute on those to prove out that it's actually working and that you can then add metrics to. And also she'll take you through methodologies for assessing where you are organizationally now and showing you where and how to evolve to the next stage. I'm going to be taking us through the first part, which is really talking about some of the cultural currents you might run into as you do this integration, both positive and negative. So first, you have the support of the analysts. The analysts love this stuff. This is Kara Hartnett-Hurst, who's obviously an advocate. She works for Business for Social Responsibility. But she says, and says it the best of anyone I've talked to, those companies that have been more successful with CSR are those that have been able to link it with brand building. And you say, well, yes, I've read this everywhere. And yet, this quote, which came from an interview that I did with a client 5 years ago, actually was at a time when, believe it or not, the two were absolutely at odds. The air was filled with greenwashing accusations. It was a time when the two had to stay separate to preserve each other. And now we say, well, that doesn't make any sense. What was going on? The fact was that the culture of the brand department is one of fierce competition. That's what you're focused on when you're building brands, is your competitors. The focus of the CSR department was on partnerships, was on working together, was on the sort of positive aspects of looking at others in your field. So it was really kind of an interesting clash of cultures. The other thing was the issue of transparency, where of course a branding person doesn't want to give away any secrets, and a CSR person has to be totally transparent. So they're cultural issues, and you say these are gone now. Even if they're not there don't appear to be there in your corporation, they are there historically, and it's kind of in the DNA of the two departments. So that's something you got to watch out for. On the other hand, as you can see, the analysts are totally supporters of what you're trying to do now. The other group that you want to know about is, of course, management. Now, this is an interesting chart. It's from The Economist, and it shows that over half of senior managers believe that the most important business result of CSR is in building a brand reputation. But on the other hand, this is the very magazine that 2 years before had done a whole separate section, as this one was from, that was anti-CSR and wanted everybody to get back to business is business. And the interesting thing is that the only way they changed their mind was because was when they went and surveyed their own readers, and their own readers said, yeah, it's really important. 70% of us do it, and of those, all of us, 50% believe that it's because we do it for brand reputation. So it's a huge chunk. You've got the support of senior management, and you've got data to show that. So why is there this tension? Again, it goes back to the culture. These are still separate silos. CSR and brand, no matter how much they know they have to depend on each other, they're still separate silos. And so you get that culture clash. Excuse me. Whoa, what happened there? Goodness. So you think about the cultures and the issues that I just talked about. Don't underestimate that difference in cultures when you think about these organizational models, and that in fact was where Lucille and I started. Now you say, well, nobody's going to say no. Management believes this is really important. Yes, people might answer this is really important, but you're shaking up our world. You are changing things, and change inspires fear. And any one of you who's been through a change management exercise has seen a slide like this before, where you say, yes, it's really important, but then there's all kinds of issues. There's never a direct no, but it can be I need more data, or that I have to go through all kinds of reports to find it for you. Most often now, in this day and age, I don't have the time. People are doing 2 jobs for every job they used to have as people have gotten laid off in the recession. Everyone's panicked about their job and about the future and their retirement. And so there's a feeling of a tremendous amount of pressure. So those are the big excuses, but you can also get all kinds of stuff. Confusion, passivity, intellectualizing, moralizing. You've all run into them. You're going to run into them here too. Don't underestimate that possibility. So we've got we've got sort of the negative perception, but then also there are these change drivers that are really going to propel you forward, and they're basically. Why does that keep doing that? That's so strange. I'm so sorry. Okay. Anyway, so they're change drivers that are going to be on your side. And Lucille's going to talk later about the angels inside your company, and they're really your supporters and your change drivers. But externally, you're going to look for data and support. And that came from consumers. You saw the previous boot camp session all about all the data about consumers and how, given everything equal, a good, strong CSR program will push them over the edge. And employees you've heard a lot about too. I want to focus on investors. This is a really important area for somebody who's trying to push through a CSR integration, because that CSR report that you have to do at some point, and Lucille again will address this, at some point you've got to do a CSR report. Investors need that. One of your primary advocates and allies can actually be the investor relations person who's getting pressure from the socially responsible investment community, which now control 1 out of every $9 that's invested, and that now includes such players as Bloomberg. You know, the tough guys at Bloomberg are now actually measuring SRI and attended the last SRI conference. So there's all this push in that investor community to get your CSR program out, and that means to brand it, to get it out in the market, to communicate about it. So you've got both constraints and you've got drivers, and understand those as we go into the organizational models that Lucille and I were trying to identify to best work within the constraints and take advantage of the opportunities.
So Carol and I conducted in-depth semi-structured interviews with key managers in branded and CSR departments in 5, hello? In 5
you're on.
Okay. I just heard a knock from somewhere. But you're right. In 5 industries. These industries were identified by McKinsey as the ones most engaged in CSR activities. We triangulated our data with information from corporate websites and reports, and also with a literature review. The analysis of our findings revealed 6 models for CSR brand integration that really fell into 2 categories: the non-adaptable models and the adaptable models. We're going to be focusing mostly on the adaptable models, but briefly, the non-adaptable models do provide some important examples and strategies. Of the 3, we'll start from the top. The mission-driven is the purest example of brand CSR integration, and it occurs in companies that were founded with social responsibility as a core value. You know them well. Some of the best-known examples are Body Shop, Ben & Jerry's, and our example here, Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. And what you see is that the 2 major components of brand, external communications and internal culture, are fully integrated with CSR. But even in this social enterprise environment, we found that things really have to be formally linked. For example, with Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, they always had a CSR focus. They always had a mission-driven focus, but they did not hire a CSR officer or produce a report for the first 20 years of the company. And it was about 5 years ago that they actually hired somebody and produced their first report, because they really needed to systematize and focus what they were doing. The product-driven consumer companies, and here PepsiCo is our example and the main one that we interviewed, are companies whose brand CSR integration efforts are traditionally grounded in their product brands, or as a colleague of mine likes to phrase it, they are a house of brands, not a branded house. In the case of PepsiCo, which produces Frito-Lay's, Quaker Oats, and a host of other products, brand CSR integration is focused on these individual products. A good example of their success in what they're doing is Quaker Oats and the association with the World Heart Federation. But at the same time, Indira Nuvi, the CEO at PepsiCo, has instituted a company-wide initiative called Performance with a Purpose that really looks to embed CSR into brand